Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Great to see some familiar names. I know we've got even one past volunteer here on the call. Looks like we've got some folks who are already confirmed, and I assume many folks who are interested in learning more about the TCT's volunteer program. So we're really happy to get the chance to chat. We thought it would be useful to say hello and put some faces to the names since we are real people here, and give you a chance to ask any questions in person. Oh, hi, Michael. Yeah, volunteer from last year. Great. You should feel free to jump in as well if you'd like to share a bit about your experience. And yeah, we are really excited about this upcoming summer and hope a lot of you will be able to come out and join us. Looks like we have a really nice crowd spread across a lot of Europe and the US at the moment, so that's great. And in the past, we've had folks join us from all over the world, everything from around the region to many far-flung corners. So it's been a really cool way to have so many people participating in the process of building the TCT and making it a reality. So, all right, let's get started. Who am I? Why am I talking to you? My name is Megan. I'm the executive director of the Transcaucasian Trail Association, which is the US-based nonprofit that coordinates and supports work across the region. Please keep yourself muted for now. Thanks so much. We will give everyone the opportunity to unmute and ask questions live if they would like later. And I am here today with on the phone, my colleague, Beth, who is actually joining us this year as our International Volunteer Program Coordinator for the summer. And fun fact about both me and Beth, we both joined the TCT as international volunteers initially. I came back to Georgia and volunteered in 2018, ended up staying here. Now, that's my whole life. Beth was a volunteer with us last year and loved it, is going to be coming back for the whole summer and helping make your experience smooth and comfortable and providing that kind of facilitation for folks who are coming from abroad to Georgia to have this experience and getting to know the TCT network and ecosystem. So Beth is currently in India. She's calling in, and her connection's a little rough, but hopefully she can hear us, and I'll give her a chance to introduce herself real quick, if she's able.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, this is not the way I was hoping to meet a lot of you. I was hoping I would be able to actually join in the Zoom call and be able to see you, see your lovely faces and vice versa. But I'm really happy to have so many of you joining us today, tonight, whatever time it is in your area right now. So thank you so much for making the time. And we hope that you will learn a lot, ask a lot of questions. And for those of you who are confirmed to join us this summer, we're really looking forward to meeting all of you. So thanks.
Thanks, Beth. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and get started. The goal of today is basically assuming that, maybe you all have looked at the website page about the volunteer program, maybe not. Either way, we'll do a very quick run through what's the TCT, how does the volunteer program fit into that, and then what does participation in the volunteer program actually look like, both in terms of how you get out there, what to expect, and what are the day-to-day things in the life of a volunteer, the type of work that you can be doing. And then we'll open the floor up and give you all the chance to ask any questions you have. And if anything strikes you along the way that you don't want to forget, please feel free to write questions in the chat and we'll lump them all together and address them at the end. So what is the Transcaucasian Trail? You might already know, but we are an international team comprised of people from all over the region, as well as a few foreigners like myself and Beth, who are currently trying to build a 3,000-kilometer hiking trail network across the entire South Caucasus region. We've been working on this since 2015. Right now, there's about 1,200 kilometers of trail that are already publicly available on our website and hikeable, and we're in active development of many of the other sections. And there's a lot of things that go into trail building, one of which is actually training up the people who can build and maintain these hiking trails for the long term. We've put a lot of work into that with our local volunteer programs, where we invite young people from around the region to come out and, spend a week or two living out in the mountains, camping, learning skills about, how to camp, how to, be outside and minimize environmental impacts, about the mountains that they all share, and how to take care of trails over the long term. We're really excited this summer that those youth programs are actually expanding a lot. We're working in all 3 countries now, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And part of the way that this is developed is that when the TCT started back in 2015, the folks who started it tried to find, people to hire, trail crew leaders, et cetera. And there just wasn't that type of really technical, skilled trail development. So as a way to sort of supplement, we started bringing over international volunteer crews, both with trail crew leaders from the US who could teach the mix of people all of these skills, and also as a fun way for basically people to come and experience the Caucasus in a totally new way and be part of this community, be part of building something together, giving back. And the mix of all that has created some really cool momentum. And we're excited to be building on that this summer. We've hosted international crews since 2016 and local crews since then as well. And we've gotten a lot of work done. It's become a pretty smooth program this year, or over the past few years, as I hope you'll see, and a really neat way to get to know folks, because now we have a really, strong cohort of Georgian crew leaders who have studied and learned these technical skills and are going to be the ones teaching you how to build trails and maintain them and all of the different steps that go into it. And part of the goal of this whole trail development project is to support the region over the long term in terms of promoting tourism that is low impact, that encourages people to slow down and engage with communities along the way, to stay in local guest houses, to understand the environments that they're passing through, so that hopefully together we can all protect these incredible mountains and diverse ecosystems, this beautiful natural and cultural heritage of the region, so that it can be enjoyed for many generations to come. So that is what all of our crews contribute to. And Beth, maybe you can walk folks through a little bit what that looks like on the ground in terms of, let's take a step back, and when volunteers arrive, what are the things that they need to do? How do they get to where we'll be working? And then we'll walk them through what that looks like.
Sure. So, transportation is one of maybe the first things you might be thinking about when you start considering coming to volunteer. Like, where is Georgia? Where is Mestia? How do I get there? There is an airport. You can fly into Mestia, but we recommend for weather purposes taking a flying into Kutaisi instead, and then or Tbilisi, depending on where you're coming from, and then taking a minibus up to Mestia. Wizz Air is that's one of the main services of Kutaisi Airport, and then from Kutaisi, as you might see on the map. Sorry, I have the slides in front of me, but I can't see where they are actually. But I cannot see what you can see. So, so from Kutaisi, you'll have to take 2 minibuses, most likely. The first to get to Zugdidi, and then from Zugdidi up to Mestia. When you go and find these minibuses, they are very easy to find. It's just a central minibus station, and everyone has a sign in the windshield, and you'll see all the drivers yelling out the name of where they're going, and you can just run up to anyone and ask where is the one to Svaneti, where is the one to Mestia, and they will point you in the right direction. Make sure you have cash to pay the marshrutka drivers. They do not accept credit cards or Apple Pay or GPay or any mobile payments. ATMs are really prevalent and easy to find in all of these areas. So that should not be a problem. And for those of you who have confirmed your volunteer spots, there's a pretty detailed description of how to get to Mestia in the information packet that was sent to you. So if you have a look at that and still have questions, please feel free to ask. But it is relatively straightforward. And in addition to the info pack, you have me and Megan to ask, and there are lots of blogs on the internet for people who travel to Mestia on their own for tourism. So there are lots of resources to help you get to Mestia. And from there, once you're in Mestia, you'll go to our base camp, and then from there, all transportation will be provided to you. The drive to the location where you're actually going to be working, and then the drive back to Mestia when the week is finished. And oh, Megan, this is really hard. I can't see like what slide you're on or what photos you're sharing.
Yeah, that's perfect. We got a quick question that we can just address now. A rough price of marshrutka from Zugdidi to Mestia. I believe that was like 35 lari. It does change every year. Prices have been going up a lot in Georgia, but it shouldn't be much higher than that. So that's about $15 US. And just a quick note, we have some folks here joining us from Georgia, so they will know all of this information already. But for folks who are coming from abroad, you'll see this photo down in the bottom right. And this is Mestia, the administrative capital of the Svaneti region. And this is the region where we will be doing trail work this year. Mestia is where we will have our base camp for volunteers this summer. As you can see, it's an incredible town with a lot of history and some really beautiful, remarkable old defense towers that are dotted along the region. And the TCT has been working in Svaneti for about 7 years now. So one really cool thing is that we've developed relationships with a lot of the people who live along the trail. And as these crews are going around and doing various maintenance projects this summer, it's pretty likely that you'll meet people that we know, you'll get a chance to experience some of the local culture. And if you have a chance to spend more time before or after your volunteering stints, we really highly recommend it. And Beth and I are both happy to give additional recommendations on hiking around the region afterwards. So now we can chat very quickly about food for the trail, which is one thing that we tend to get a lot of questions about. Beth, take it away if you can.
Okay. So yes, so all food during your volunteer week is provided to you. Most of it is vegetarian. There is meat provided for like lunch sandwiches, things like that, but the breakfast and dinners, those are all vegetarian just because of the logistics of keeping and storing meat in a non-refrigerated area is not, it's not easy, so we don't do it. So for those of you who are vegetarian, you do not need to worry. You will be, you'll have plenty to eat and then some. We do have plenty of food, snacks, things like that to take on the trail. After you come back from work, there's always food available. But if you want to bring any snacks or food that you think you might want throughout the week, please feel free to bring it with you. And snacks, chocolates, pretzels, whatever, those comfort foods that you might have from home. And as Megan mentioned, Mestia is a really large town. So that is where you're going to be meeting your group, meeting your team. And it has a lot of restaurants. It has a lot of shops and stores, a couple larger grocery stores. So don't worry about, oh, you have to bring so many things from home or else you're not going to be able to get it in Georgia. You will. When you arrive, you can definitely hit up those shops and get some snacks if you want. Um, and then, as Megan said, it's a really nice town. So if you have a couple days before or after and just want to stay and roam around and eat really, really good Georgian food, I highly recommend that. The food you'll be getting on trail is really good. It's nutritious. It's generally not your typical Georgian cuisine. So if you do want to experience that, which I recommend everyone should, um, you know, at least once since you're in the country, definitely take advantage of being in Nestia for a day or two before or after you leave, and you can try some of the local dishes. They're really, really good. But don't worry about running out of food or not getting things you like on the trail. Food is very plentiful, so you don't need to worry about running out or anything like that. We restock the food supplies with every team going up. So and we take into account how many people are there, like what people have been eating before, after, to kind of gauge what we should buy, how much we should bring up, things like that. So Megan, if you have anything to add, feel free. Or if anyone has any questions, ask away.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just point out that the photo you can see here is a pretty typical lunch spread on the trail. So we're eating picnic style in a nice little shady spot close to where we're working. We've got some Georgian bread, tomatoes, cheese, cucumbers, sausage, and then a nice selection of biscuits, Nutella, peanut butter, and our classic favorite sour candies, which are a very TCT classic. Fueling everyone for the hot days. So in terms of accommodation, I'll let Beth talk about that as well.
Right. So during your volunteer week, you're all going to be bringing a tent with you. So that will be your home while you are in the field. So make sure you have one that is sturdy and steady and you actually enjoy being in, because that will be your home for 7 days out there. But the night you arrive in Mestia, that Friday prior to the start of your volunteer week, and the Sunday after you return, you'll be housed in our base camp in Mestia. More details of which we will be sharing with you at a later date. But that will be definitely less rustic than your tents. You'll be able to have hot showers, there'll be hot water, and all of the amenities of a hostel, guest house, bed and breakfast. So if you have any extra luggage, belongings, things that you brought to Georgia with you, but you don't necessarily want to take to the field, you're more than welcome to leave them in Mestia. So you don't need to bring, things that you're not going to need with you. But accommodation it's basic, but it works. It's typical, accommodations that most people experience in the field. And if you take a chance to go hike the trail before or after your week, you'll really get a sense of, what it's like to camp on the trail and things like that. So, yeah, I think that's it for accommodation.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a nice little warm base camp to welcome you all into, and then back from the field. We try to get a nice little volunteer house every summer, and it's a lot of fun. Just one note about tents, while I'm thinking about it, is sometimes people ask us what type of tent should I bring? And the only thing I would say to that is one thing to keep in mind, especially in the earlier months like July, is that the thunderstorms in the Caucasus and in Western Georgia, where we'll be working in particular, the thunderstorms can be quite intense. You get a lot of weather moving in off of the Black Sea, and sometimes that can come on quite suddenly. So having a tent that is sturdy and that would be, able to withstand a big rainstorm and potentially hailstorm is important. And it can get quite cold at night, especially at higher elevations. We usually aren't camping too high for trail work, but still you could expect Messy is at around 2,000 meters, and will probably be a little bit higher than that. So I recommend that you bring a sleeping bag where you know you will be comfortable down to freezing temperatures, because that can happen. It's a bit rare in the summer, but it does get quite chilly. So whatever that means for you, some people that's a nice little light sleeping bag. For people like me, it's like full on Arctic gear. Everyone's different. Pick what works for you. Which is a perfect segue into what does a typical day on the trail even look like? So Beth, you were out there pretty recently. Want to walk us through it?
Yes. So this is a typical schedule. Again, trail work always involves or can involve some last minute changes, things like that. But this is generally what your schedule is probably going to look like. So we wake up early. By 6:20, if the wake up call is sounded, everyone's getting dressed, heading down to breakfast. And then at around 7:30, we host a safety circle. So that's sort of like the morning, the morning meeting. Everyone kind of has the announcements for the day, if there are any. Stretching circle. Everyone does their stretches and gives a safety reminder for the day, just to keep all of those safety safety facts in mind as you head out to the trail. Things as simple as oh, remember to drink water, wear sunscreen, and remember to wear your helmet and your goggles and gloves at all times. Things like that. Look behind you when you have a tool, just to keep that in mind as you're working throughout the week. And then around 8, everyone hikes to the work site, and that it's not. Hike is maybe not the right term to use. It's not a very, very strenuous hike. It could be, depending on where your camp is and where the work site is. It could be a couple kilometers. Last year, I think maybe 2 or 3 kilometers. It was uphill, but we did take breaks on the way up, so no one was completely exhausted by the time we got there. Then we spent some time, getting the gear together, giving different people their work assignments for the day, and then getting safety gear on, and then head to the specific work site. And then at 10 o'clock, there's a short break, another one at 12 o'clock for lunch. And then at lunch, everyone stops work, everyone comes together and eats picnic style, which is really nice. Everyone gets to chat and catch up with one another. And then at 2 o'clock, there's another break. And then by 4, everyone starts to, start cleaning up and then heading back to the camp for a little free time. And then around around 7 o'clock at night is dinner. Everyone does have camp chores throughout the week. So some people are on wake up duty, making sure everyone is awake on time. People are on breakfast duty, just putting, the hot water on, and then everyone kind of makes their own breakfast. There was water duty, making sure that there was always water around. And then, of course, dinner duty and cleanup duty. So it's a really communal affair. Everyone takes turns doing all of the different chores. And everyone just supports each other, which is really nice. And it really gives that sense of community to the work you're doing as well. And really gives you a chance to get to know each other and the crew leaders and everyone else involved. And sometimes, if the weather's really nice, you'll have a campfire at night. And if anyone is musically inclined and wants to bring a guitar or anything like that with you to camp, last year we had a pretty good musical crew each night, sitting around the campfire, singing songs, things like that. So it is a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun too. So it's a really good balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might be thinking, that sounds like a lot of work. That sounds really physically intense. And it can be if you want it to. But I also want to highlight that, I've a little slide here showing some of the different types of work that volunteers do. And this is a really broad stretch, actually. And in terms of the tasks and the projects we're going to be working on this summer, we're going to be moving around the region doing several different types of maintenance projects. So, what that will look like for your crew will likely depend specifically on your crew. But typically, when we're doing trail work, there's a lot of different things that need to get done. There's a lot of clearing back vegetation. Sometimes there's benching, which is moving a lot of dirt to create the flat path to walk on, doing some of the finishing work to make it look really nice and smooth, cutting drainage to make sure that water can flow off of the trail, working with rocks, and then actually marking and blazing the trail so that people can follow it more easily. And as you can imagine, that means that, you can see that there's some parts of that work that are really physically intense. So when you're moving rocks or when you're moving dirt, that is quite demanding work, and it can be very tiring, especially in the first few days when there are new movements for your muscles and you haven't quite warmed up to it yet. But the good thing is there's always more to do. And we really, want to be erring on the side of caution with volunteers and not overstretching yourselves. So if you're feeling tired at any points, we really encourage people to take breaks. We have mandatory break periods when no one is allowed to work, all of the tools go down, people break for snacks and for lunch, but that is in no way prohibitive of taking a break when you need a break. That is very highly encouraged. And if you're feeling tired, there's always something else that's a bit less physically demanding that needs done. So it means you can shift around and try a lot of different tasks, figure out what you like, figure out what you're interested in, and be contributing the whole time. And
yes, and I will jump in and just say, like water breaks are highly, highly encouraged. If you're feeling tired or just not great, no one will prohibit you from just stopping to take a break. It's definitely not a, oh, you're here to do work and we want you to work all the time kind of culture. No, we do definitely want you to contribute to the trail, but your health and your safety is most important. So the water breaks are highly encouraged if you're not feeling well. Yes, there are lesser tasks to be done. So don't ever feel like, oh, I'm here to work and I don't feel well, but I have to keep working. So that is not the case at all. So we want you to work, but we want you to have fun and enjoy it too.
Yeah. And no one has fun when they're injured. So we do everything we can to prohibit that, which actually one exciting thing that we're doing this year is for the very first time, we're hosting a wilderness first responder course in Georgia for our staff and crew leaders, as well as some of the crew leaders from Armenia. So our staff, who are leading these crews will now have the full 10 days of wilderness medicine education and be prepared to respond if you get injured, if something happens in the field, or if something needs that type of attention. And we're going to be doing a lot of work and scenario building around not only what happens if someone has a medical issue arise, but what does that look like specifically in Georgia and the types of response mechanisms that are available and what our best ways of seeking help will be. We've been doing this on a much more informal team basis for years with several of our staff who do have more in-depth wilderness medicine training, but this is the first time we've been able to offer that level to all of our crew leaders. So it's a really exciting professionalization step, and I think it will benefit the program a lot. So that segues nicely into the questions that Paul and Dan just asked, which is about safety equipment. So yes, we provide personal protective equipment. If you're someone like Dan who works on trails already, maybe you have a pair of gloves or eyewear that you really like that fits you well, definitely feel free to bring those, but we have plenty. We get a lot of those every summer and we'll never have a shortage of protective equipment. That is a big priority for us. And here you can see the packing list of what you do suggest that we suggest that you bring. And when you apply, you will get all of this information in an email and PDF packet from Beth. So not too much to go over here right now, just a few things to highlight that what's great for trail work is oftentimes really sturdy stuff. So the ultra lightweight, really sexy lightweight rain gear, that might not actually be what you want to bring when you've got sharp tools around and you're actually living out in it for a week. You might want to err on the side of stuff that is going to be durable and you're not going to be afraid to shred a little bit. So just something to keep in mind. And you'll see here that there's a big emphasis on just elements protection. So sun protection, sun hat, long sleeve shirts, those types of things are very useful, as well as we really highly recommend bringing several pairs of extra socks. And one nice thing about trail work is that basically you're going out into the field and you're setting up camp and you're living in that spot for a week. So you don't need to stress about overpacking so much that it really weighs you down, because there's usually the opportunity to make several trips and to haul stuff with you. So bring those extra pair of socks, bring your Kindle if you want to read at night. You can really set up a nice little base camp for yourself and have spares of the stuff that will be useful to you. Oh yeah, and one thing is having durable work boots with something that's like a hard top rather than sneakers is really important for this type of work when you're working with heavy tools, so that, God forbid, if you miss, like, you want a boot that will stop a tool rather than going straight into the top of your mesh sneakers. And our crew leaders will give you an orientation of how to use all of these tools at the start of your week. We assume that, for better purposes, that everyone coming in has no trail work experience. If you do, that's awesome. But we will teach everything at a very beginner level so that you can use all of this stuff safely, get comfortable with it, and be safe throughout the week. Beth, was there anything you wanted to add on packing lists before I plowed through?
I don't think so. No, I think at least from the applications I saw, most of you were pretty avid hikers or worked in the outdoors. So I think most people should already have a lot of this. And if you don't, borrow it from friends. There's no need to go out and buy a whole new set of stuff for your volunteer week. So use what you have. If you don't have it, borrow it. Yeah, and like Megan said, you're going to be living here for a week. So bring things that you enjoy doing too. So bring your books, bring your Kindle, bring a set of cards or something like that. So yeah, just bring something to keep you entertained.
Yeah, that's good advice. You end up having a bit more downtime than you think you might looking at the packed work schedule. Afternoons are really nice for reading in your tent or hanging out in the sunshine or chilling out with the new friends you've made. And there's a good bit of time to just relax and enjoy the beautiful environment that you're in. Speaking of which, I just wanted to show this to chat a little bit about some of the projects that we'll be doing this year. So this is the view from Guli Pass, which is part of the Upper Svaneti TCT. And this trail stretches about 150 kilometers in total from the village cluster of Ciuberi in Western Svaneti all the way to Ushguli, which is sort of at the end of Svaneti, if you will. And over the years, this has become far and away the most popular section of the Transcaucasian Trail. There were, in 2019, roughly, according to the estimates we heard from guest house owners, about 27,000 people who hiked the Mestia to Ushguli section of trail over summer, about 3,000 on the Ciuberi to Mestia section. So big gaps. And the Mestia to Ushguli trail has become very famous in its own right, and it's getting a lot of use. It really needs some maintenance, as do some of the areas that our crews first built back in 2016 and 2017, where they put in the very first sets of bridges and check steps along a lot of these trails, and we're rehabilitating these ancient trails that people helped us find, connecting villages to villages across the region. And now, it's 6-7 years later, we're getting to the point where some of those things really need some maintenance so that this trail can continue to be sustainably used for many years to come. And we're hoping that this summer, both will be able to address some of the biggest maintenance needs along the trail, as well as set it up so that this can become more of a regular thing where, maintenance is normal and we can have systems set up for people to go out and do that. And that means that there's going to be a lot of fun projects. And it means that, so just for reference point, this pass is like it's part of a one-day hike that you can do from Mestia. So if you have even a few days to spare, can really recommend getting out and exploring part of the trail that surrounds you afterwards. So that's where we'll leave it for now. We've talked to you for a little bit. We'll be really keen to hear what questions you have, any concerns, things you're curious, want to know about. So floor is yours. Please feel free to either write questions in the chat or to just unmute yourself, introduce yourself and ask your question, and Beth will be happy to answer. So thank you.
I've got a question, which is, can you guys help getting some boots from Tbilisi to Mestia, and that we're going to be bike packing for a month? Our plan is to bike pack from Tbilisi to Mestia, and boots is, we can take pretty much everything else, but boots is a bit trickier.
Be in touch. I don't want to promise anything right now. My sense is like almost certainly yes, especially if that's something that you have already and so you just want to like even it's not, well, because we'll have cars going up there, so I'm sure we can fit a pair of boots in. That's not a problem. Also, how cool, what an incredible journey. So Paul asked, how big are the crews? So we try to limit our crew sizes at 10 people, which is what we found to kind of be really the optimal size, where it doesn't get unwieldy and it's manageable for a crew leader and assistant crew leader. But it's on the bigger ends of how big the crews usually are. In the past, we've had crews ranging from anywhere from like, I guess, 4 to 12 people on the very upper end. The ones you all are working on will probably be more along the 6 to 10 side of people, including crew leaders.
Hi, I'm Rachel from the UK, and I'm just trying to work out in my head. So on different weeks, will people be using different campsites in the field then to move the trail? Is that what will happen?
Yeah, basically what we'll do is we'll be going out earlier in the summer and doing the planning part of the trail work. So we have ideas already about what we see as some of the major maintenance issues. We'll go out at, towards the end of May through June and be mapping out where exactly each crew, needs to go, what needs to be done, and where the good camp spots are. So likely we will have several different locations throughout the summer. It's possible that a few crews will kind of repeat locations depending on the size of job to be done. Another question from another Paul asking if anyone has found the best flight route from London to Kutaisi. Unfortunately, that is not something I can answer, but I would welcome any other input from the UK, like Abby seems to have already done. Thank you, Abby. So if anyone else has flown from London to Kutaisi, have a look. Wizz Air is one of the low-cost airlines that flies to Kutaisi and is generally a good place to start looking for tickets.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've looked at various sort of Wizz Air options, and they all seem to involve it's quite sort of probably coming via Gdansk or something. But okay, that's fine. I'll try and work something out.
Yeah, there's always the option to fly into Tbilisi as well if that's easier. Sometimes the flight paths might be better. And then, as someone mentioned earlier in the chat, there is a really quite comfortable train that runs from Tbilisi to Zugdidi, where you can then get on the minibus that Beth mentions. It adds a couple hours to travel time, but it's not much in the grand scheme of things. You're basically looking at a full day of travel to get up to Mestia regardless. And the train is very nice, easy to book online in advance, and can definitely recommend it. Kathy asked if we came into Mestia a few days early, can we recommend places to stay? Yes, definitely. A lot of great guest houses in Mestia. We'd be happy to share, our personal favorites. And depending on the situation for the volunteer house, it's possible that there may or may not be places for people to stay a few days on either side. We have to sort that out in June as well. It's the type of thing where, unfortunately, it's just a bit too challenging to plan in advance, because that's not really how things work. You got to show up in June and talk to people and figure out things in person, and do it a little bit more, closer to the time. But we've never had an issue finding a great place to stay. We've got pals in Mestia. We'll end up with a lovely spot for you all. So Dan asked about visa requirements for US citizens, including any countries that might require transit visas on routes. So Georgia has a visa-free regime for many, many countries, including the US, UK, most European countries, and many others. So have a look at your government's travel site. I know for certain, for Americans and many other folks, you don't need a visa at all. You just fly in or arrive over a land border, get stamped in, no problem. You can stay up to a year without a visa. So, when you fall in love with the TCT and decide to, uproot your whole life and move to Georgia, for example, you got a little time to play with. What else is on folks' minds? What else can we help with?
Already applied and got a spot. What are the next steps? Or like how much in advance we get like further information? Or another question would also be, is there kind of a messenger group? I don't know why, WhatsApp, Facebook, or Signal, whatever messenger. So for those ones to get to know each other, with the other colleagues then in the group.
Yeah, I'll let Beth answer that, since she's managing that this year.
Yeah, so we do have a WhatsApp group. So that was just started up. So yes, people have been chiming in, getting to know each other, introducing themselves. There is a Facebook group for current and former volunteers. It's not terribly active, but if you join, there might be some like advice from previous years that you could take advantage of. But this year we're focusing more on the WhatsApp group as kind of one of the main methods of communication and one of the ways for everyone to get to know each other prior to going, and then for people to ask advice. For people in group 7 or 8, they might ask the people from groups 1 and 2, hey, what was your experience like? Do I really need such and such, and things like that. So yes, there is a group for that, to answer your question. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. One question from Kathy: can we store stuff at your base camp that we don't want to take to the work camp? Yes, absolutely. There'll be plenty of space, and you can certainly do that. I imagine that would include, bikes for any intrepid bike tours that are making their way up to Mestia. I'm sure we'll be able to figure out some storage for you all. Rachel asked about seeing on a TCT blog from a previous year that there were lots of mosquitoes, which people found challenging, wondering if mosquitoes are likely to be a problem in this area. I haven't had so many issues with mosquitoes in these regions that we're working in.
It's too cold. It's too cold for mosquitoes.
Well, it depends what elevation you're at. But yeah, on the whole, I don't think that'll be as much of a problem as the area that was likely being referenced, which was a lower elevation valley in Zesco, where we've been working for several years and where many of our local crews will be based this year, building a brand new trail through some really tough mountain terrain. So having some bug spray is a good idea. If you're worried about it and you really want to err on the side of not being in buggy terrain, I will say that later summer tends to be much nicer for that than earlier summer. So June, July, sometimes you're dealing with mosquitoes as well as occasionally biting flies. Again, I haven't had so many issues with that in this region in particular. When they come out, it's usually like a very short time period. So yeah. Nora's asking questions about the finances of the TCTA and member organizations. So we do publish annual reports. We're wrapping up our 22 report now, which we'll be publishing in the first half of this year. And I'm happy to answer any more detailed questions about that over email or at another time, since that seems, yeah, I mean, it's very relevant. I will say, so in terms of the volunteer fee that goes into this program, we do ask volunteers for a fee because that helps cover basically all of the things that go into hosting this opportunity possible without external funding to do it. So that means food, transportation, insurance. It means paying the salary of the local crew leaders who are working, hosting trainings for those crew leaders to provide a safe experience, lodging for a base camp, and all of those things. And we do run it at a loss most years, but it's something that we feel really strongly about in terms of providing as an opportunity for people to get to know the Caucasus and participate in it. And if there's any extra, it subsidizes our local programs where we, the training programs I mentioned earlier, where we bring young people from around the region together to work out in the summer and learn these skills. So yeah, happy to share more details. It's a good question.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Are there plans to, well, I've been on the camp last year. So,
Oh, great.
And I'm going to hike myself on one part. But the TCT is also in Armenia and Azerbaijan. Are there plans to, in the near future, to organize a work camp over there?
Not in the immediate term. In past years, we have organized international volunteer camps in Armenia. We did that in 2017, I believe 2018, as well as 2019, and stopped basically because there wasn't the staff capacity for it. Our TCT Armenia team is 2 guys who are working part-time on the trail. And because of the partnerships we've built up with other organizations who are doing a lot of the trail work now, we have a partner organization called Trails for Change, which runs all of these local training programs and is the main implementer on most of the TCT projects that happen in the region now. There wasn't the same kinds of local programs to overlap with, where it made sense to bring on international volunteers to be working together. And there wasn't really there wasn't the capacity to do it for those years. So I don't see that changing in Armenia the coming years. We have talked about it in Azerbaijan, but I think we need a few more, at least 1 more year of building up capacity before we're in a position to be able to host that and do it really well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dan asks, how hard is it to communicate in smaller towns if you don't know Georgian or Russian? It depends. In this region in particular, there's now a good number of people actually who speak some English, or who at the very least have, a daughter, son, granddaughter, grandson, who they will happily call on their cell phone and, ask you to talk to them. but I think you might find it easier than you think, especially if you're used to getting around with a little bit of sign language and miming things. People are quite used to, by now, seeing foreign truckers come through and are usually very open, very friendly, and happy to help. Okay, Cressy asked about charging a camera for photos. So in terms of charging electronics in general, I will say there's going to most likely be very limited charging capacities. So highly recommends bringing a power bank or a few power banks if you think that'll be a big need. You know, most people don't bother with bringing solar panels or anything like that. If you really thought that you might be energy hungry, you certainly can, and feel free. We will have a few, you know, we have a few organizational power banks, like as part of the gear that the crew leaders will have, but that's mostly for kind of emergency power, you know, their phone dies and they need to get in touch and that sort of thing. They also have like inReach satellite communicators. So if we are camping out of service, which does happen a lot of the time, there's always a way for them to check in with us. They send daily messages twice a day, in morning and evening, letting the folks back at base camp know that everything is okay. And we have a system, you know, set up for doing and sure that nothing goes wrong and everyone is in touch. Okay, and question from Constantine, is it known which exact section for this summer? So for sure, we will be working the stretch of the Transcaucasian Trail between Chuberi and Ushkuli, but where exactly we are working will depend from crew to crew and will depend basically on the prioritization work and the planning work that happens at the start of the summer. So not yet.
Bye-bye, take care.
Yeah. All right, well, if there's any last questions, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, you have, well, most people probably have my email by now, but please feel free to get in touch with either me or Beth. You can always get in touch by just emailing info@transcaucasiantrail.org, and I will put you in touch with whoever the most relevant person is. And we really hope we'll see you out there this summer. We're looking forward to the season. I think it's going to be a good one. And yeah, looking forward to building on this momentum. So thank you everyone for joining. Happy trails in the meantime. Hope you're all getting some nice hikes in as spring starts to roll in. And let us know if you have any questions. So. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.